eliminates that feed, fencing, and farm equipment sales tax. What I can promise you is the intent to make the effort. I cannot guarantee that we're going to achieve success. Tax reform is going to be very controversial. It's going to be very difficult. It'll be the most difficult vote most of our members will ever have to take. Whether we can be successful on your behalf or not is to be determined. But what I can tell you is, as I have every step of the way during my 14 years in the state Senate, I will represent the horse industry and your desires and your wishes to be treated equitably like other farmers who raise livestock. Wish us the best. We're going to need you. We're going to need you to be advocates. We're going to need you, the CBA and the farm managers and KEEP and the KTA, to work collaboratively. Let's put all these alphabet soups groups together in a room and come up with an advocacy policy in Frankfurt to make sure that you're reaching out and touching your representatives and your senators in Frankfurt to let them know the economic giant that is the horse industry, so we can have yet another success in our state capital. Thank you all for your time and attention. I appreciate the invitation today.
Thank you, Senator. That was great. Thanks for all your help. Next up, we're going to have Lori Johnson from the Jockey Club to give us an update on microchipping and some registration standards that have changed for this year because it's a mandatory thing. So, Lori?
Good afternoon. In 2016, the registry offered its customers the ability to microchip their foals on a volunteer basis. Many of our customers took advantage of that phase-in period. We expect that over 60% of the 2016 foal crop will be chipped and their chip number recorded on their certificate of foal registration. Microchipping the thoroughbred is a mandatory requirement beginning with this year's foal crop. As chipping adds another step in the registration process, we felt it important to redesign the pamphlet that we send out with every registration application kit. We brought some of those are out there behind the sign-up desk, but they are also page 10 and 11 of your booklet. Along with that, we put that pamphlet on our website, on the Jockey Club website and on the registry's website in several different places, and we posted that and the video you're about to see. After viewing the short video, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have about microchipping.
Beginning with foals born in 2017, registering your thoroughbred now requires the implant of a microchip and the reporting of the microchip number to the Jockey Club. Microchips are a fast, safe, and effective measure for enhancing the identification of thoroughbred racehorses. And when coupled with official written markings, microchips will improve the efficiency and reliability of the identification process throughout the life of every thoroughbred. So, you've received your registration packet from the Jockey Club. What is the best procedure to identify your foal, pull a sample for DNA parentage testing, and insert the microchip? The microchip is to be implanted first, prior to the DNA sampling and identification. It can be done minutes, days, or even months before the other two steps. As always, it's important that a DNA sample is pulled and the foal's markings recorded in the same setting, one foal at a time. Use a microchip reader and scan the foal to verify no chip has been implanted previously. Next, scan the chip to ensure its readability and verify the number to the labels provided in the package and that chip. Implant the chip. The microchip is intended for use by a licensed veterinarian or by trained veterinary personnel under the supervision of a veterinarian. Following the insert of the chip, use the reader again to scan the foal to verify the chip is still readable. Attach the labels, one to the front and one to the back of the registration application, before proceeding with collecting the DNA typing sample and recording markings. Use the reader to scan the foal. Verify that the Datamars label number placed on the registration application is the same as the number for the foal as indicated on the reader's screen. Pull the DNA sample from the foal that matches the pedigree information printed on the sampling kit. Pull 30 to 50 hairs from the mane or tail, making sure to obtain root bulb, and place the hair sample in the appropriately marked envelope. Photograph the foal. Be sure the foal is clean and on a solid surface. Use a signboard to indicate the year of birth and dam's name. Include at least one photo of scanned chip number alongside the pedigree of the foal as shown. Record the markings on the registration application. As in the past, be sure to include the sex, color, all white markings, head and neck cowlicks. And beginning with the 2017 full crop, the microchip number must be reported to the registry office. Seal a pre-printed envelope and mail the DNA sample to the laboratory. Mail the registration materials to the Jockey Club offices or submit the registration application online at registry.jockeyclub.com.
Thank you, Lori. Next up, it's my pleasure to introduce Kirk Becker. You've probably heard his voice many times, whether you're racing or you're selling. And Kurt's quite a friend of the industry, and he does a lot for a lot of us. The racing part's easy, but what really I think he does the most for is when it comes to selling our horses, because he puts a lot of heart and soul into his announcements and the research that he does, and the interface that he has with all of us when he's selling our horses. So he really does try hard to help every horse bring as much as he can. So I would encourage you all, if you don't know Kurt, to try to get to know him because he's terrific. And the more that we give to Kurt, the better he can help sell our horses. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kurt. He also announces for the NASCAR motorsport industry. So not only is he announcing races at Keeneland, but he's also doing NASCAR races. So maybe he'll have a little bit to tell us about that. But Kurt, he's going to moderate for us today, by the way. After I turn it over to him, he's going to take it from here, and he'll carry things through for the rest of the day.
Folks, good to be with you this afternoon. It's a pleasure to be invited to take part, and just building on what Joe had mentioned, when it comes to my role working the sales here, I grew up in a standardbred family in Illinois, and my dad is still active as a breeder of standardbreds, and he has announced standardbred auctions for many, many years. And one of the things that I learned from my father is, if I'm on the stand announcing when your horse comes into the ring, that what I need to do is look at the page, and I need to look at that page as a prospective buyer. And that's what I will try to do. I will look down that page and pick the highlights that if I were sitting in the audience waiting to bid, what to me would be the highlights that can be condensed in the span of a 15 to 20 second opening speech. And as Joe said, I'm always interested to get constructive criticism and guidance. That part is something that we will always be receptive to, because of the fact that you are the ones in the trenches. You know these horses, and you know what you would prefer to have emphasized from the stand. So by all means, always feel free to speak up, and it's a partnership that we enjoy. I am here today to learn a few things myself, because I've been asked to moderate the Young Professionals panel. And we had a meeting a week ago at the Keeneland Library, the CBA and I, and we talked about the folks who would be serving on the panel. And I'm very curious to learn a few things myself about the perspective of young people. I'm speaking as someone who's 48 years old now. I've been at Keeneland for 20 years in racing, and have been here for right at 17 years in terms of sales. So want to mention, where's Daniel Schmidt? There's Daniel. Fun to see a fellow Saluki. Daniel and I both actually hail originally from the land of Lincoln, from the state of Illinois, and we are both graduates of Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, home of the Salukis. And I took a look. I knew there would be some folks from the Kentucky Equine Management Internship Program that would be here today, and Daniel is one of those interns, so it's good to have him with us, as well as all of you here in the room. So I'm anxious to start asking some questions, so I'm just going to ask that would like to have the panel to please come forward and be seated at this time. And we will introduce you to each member of the panel. To give you an idea, here's the way that the format will work. I've got some questions of my own. Once we get through those, there will be folks who will be in the audience with wireless microphones in case you all have questions that you would like to ask of the panel as well. One note before we get into the questioning. Joe had also mentioned the fact that I do work in motorsports with NASCAR. I want to tell you that one of the great pleasures for me has been witnessing the respect that people in the world of NASCAR have for what goes on in this industry. When American Pharoah was going for the Triple Crown, if you went through the garage area and if you talked to crew chiefs, if you talked to like a Chad Knaus, Jimmy Johnson's crew chief, you know what he identified with? He was curious about the trainer. He wanted to know about Bob Baffert. The crew chiefs seemed to identify with the role of the trainer. And of course, the drivers in NASCAR, tremendous respect for the jockeys. I've had more than one race car driver, seriously, that have pulled me aside and said, look, you know, we go on the track and we've got a safety structure, we've got a roll cage, we've got a head and neck safety restraint system. They are fascinated by what folks do who get on the backs of these horses. They will tell you those cats don't have that kind of protection, and they have tremendous regard for what goes on in this sport. So now let's move to our young professionals panel, and we will start for those of you who are facing the stage. We will start to your left, closest to the podium. The first individual seated here is Jack Carlino. Jack is 21 years of age. He is from Phoenix, Arizona. He recently completed a degree at the University of Louisville in Equine Business Administration, and he is a first-year trainee with the Godolphin Flying Start program. Seated next to Jack is Megan Hebert, 21 years of age, from Oxfordshire, England. She has a BA in history, and she also first year with Godolphin Flying Start, which of course promotes management and leadership training for a career in the thoroughbred industry. Up next, we have Chance Tim. Chance is originally from Murray, Utah, near Salt Lake. He is currently the director of stallion seasons at Lane's End. Chance, if I remember correctly, you're also a Godolphin Flying Start alum, correct? And the racetrack industry program, as I recall, as well.
I got a lot of degrees for some reason, but yeah.
Looking forward to exploring that with you shortly, because I've got a lot of questions on that front. As we move further down the line, Ben Henley. Ben is originally from Australia. He has 18 years of international experience around the globe in this industry. Ben, it's remarkable as I look down your resume at the various spots where you have been and the experience that you have gained. And currently, he is on the staff at Airdrie Stud. Came to Airdrie 2008? 2006. And in your role there, as I recall, it is bloodstock related, is it not?
Yeah, bloodstock operations.
Bloodstock operations, very good. And then Anthony Cook. Anthony sports a surname with which most everyone in this room is familiar. Of course, Anthony's father, Gus, for many years, the farm manager at Claiborne Farm. Anthony is a graduate of the University of Kentucky, and he is on the staff at Hallway Feeds here in Lexington. And one of the things that I learned about Anthony, I was chatting with him earlier today, and I said, you know, I know your father, Gus, have known him for years, and he said, well, actually, he said, my involvement in racing predates my father, so we will talk about that in just a moment. Megan, I would like to start with you, if I may, if you would be so kind as to take the wireless mic. Red, where first of all, you're a Formula One fan, is that correct?
Yeah, I really enjoy it.
Have you ever been to a Formula One race?
No, not yet.
It's a fantastic sport. Those of us who follow motorsports in addition to horse racing, we have marveled and said that to have the chance to work in Formula One, to travel all over the globe would be an amazing experience. International Racing Bureau. You spent some time with the IRB. Did you have a chance to get to know a man named Alistair Donald?
I did, yeah. Alistair is sort of the CEO or the president of the IRB, which is based in Newmarket.
You know, Alistair is the guy that, from the International Racing Bureau, when it comes time for the Breeders' Cup, there are a lot of us who enjoy relying on him for his insight into the European contingent, and he never lets us down. I know there are Americans who will, when they see Alistair during Breeders' Cup week, they will say that if Alistair tells you it's Easter, you better paint your eggs. You've got an impressive resume because of the fact, Megan, that at a young age you've had a chance to work for organizations and in environments that have involved both racing and sales. We mentioned the fact that you are now a first-year trainee with Godolphin Flying Start. So my first question to you is, given the fact that you arguably had already begun making contacts within the world of horse racing, what was it that caused you to look at the Flying Start program, which is exclusive? They take 12 per year from all those applicants around the world. Why did you decide that was important for you to go ahead and roll the dice and apply and become part of that program?
I like the fact that the Flying Start required a degree, as I was doing my history degree when I really started seriously thinking about applying. I really was very keen to take the opportunity to see as many countries as possible. Dubai, for example, would be somewhere I wouldn't have a chance to go to otherwise, I don't think. And it's such a privilege with Godolphin when you're working in the barns to see the quality of mares. They have obviously the stallions as well, and I just don't think these things would have been available to me in any other capacity. I'm not from a horsey or a racing family, so Godolphin has opened doors for me that wouldn't have been there otherwise.
It's a remarkable program because of the depth of the curriculum. The Godolphin Flying Start program, if you're not familiar with it in its entirety, take a look sometime. The breadth of the program, the depth of the program, both racing and sales, the breeding aspect of the game as well, and this is all covered very thoroughly in a relatively short period of time. Given the fact that there are so many aspects of this industry which could appeal to a young person, has Flying Start helped you to focus your interests where you would like to go in this game?
I think so, yeah, very much so. I'm very interested in the training side of things, but I'd have no previous experience of working in a breeding shed, for example, which Godolphin has facilitated, and I thoroughly enjoy going up there and helping, so it's definitely helped widen my experience and things that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise, so I'd say so.
Now, if you would be so kind as to pass the mic to your right, Jack, I have some questions for you, since you also are first year with Godolphin Flying Start. First of all, I was looking over your background. You grew up in the southwestern United States, saw where you spent some time working for Hall of Fame trainer Richard Mandella. So I have to ask, just out of my own curiosity as a racing fan, did you ever get any chance to spend some time with Beholder?
Yeah, I did. So Beholder was actually in her preparation for the first time she ran in the Pacific Classic and won. So I was there every day in the barn with her. I didn't actually walk her. She had her team that was set, had been set for a while. Was a quirky filly, so that was some kept constant. And unfortunately, I had to come back, I think it was 3 days before the race, to get back to Louisville to start the semester, but watched it on TV and was thrilled. So it was an awesome summer to be there just because she was there prepping for that race and ran such an unbelievable race that it was a lot of fun.
I know that you have also done an internship with Del Mar. What an environment in which to do an internship. So we've talked about the fact that the Flying Start program that Godolphin offers, you get all of these applicants from all over the world. And I don't doubt for a minute that I would not want to be on their committee to make the decision. It's got to be a tough task. I'm sure there are a lot of young people who, both from the aspect of education and working in the industry, apply for one of those 12 spots. What is it, in addition to the fact that, yes, you could demonstrate you've got the degree in equine business administration, you've worked for Mr. Mandella, you spent time doing an internship at Del Mar, any advice that you can give to young people interested in applying for that program that could help set them apart to catch the attention of the folks in charge?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just like show initiative. So whether you're from anywhere in the world, is show that you're really passionate about the horses, show that you really care. And you can do that a variety of ways. You know, if you if you're used to one thing and being one place, then go out of your comfort zone and do something else, because that just shows that you care about not only the horses and the business, but you're willing to get out there and do something, get out of your comfort zone, because if you do get on the program, that's something you're going to have to do. You go to a variety of countries, you work in a variety of places, and it's just good to be able to show to get out of what you're used to, whatever that is, and just show that you're willing to get out there, really, and have the initiative. So.
I know there is a scholarship that's offered. Now, my recollection, I went to college back in the late 80s, early 90s. I know times can certainly change, but if I am someone who is interested in this program, okay, great, there's a scholarship. Are you still, you and Megan, for example, are you still responsible for expenses that can be incurred? I mean, you've got to think about lodging, you've got to think about food, this kind of thing, or is that provided as well?
Yeah, so luckily it's a full scholarship provided by Sheikh Mohammed, and lodging, Godolphin has a variety of lodging at all the farms we go to, and that's taken care of. You get a monthly allowance, so you're not flush by any means, so you have to keep your head on your shoulders and stay smart about it. But everything is taken care of to the point where you follow your schedule, do what you got to do, and keep a keen eye on your bank account, and then you're well taken care of by Sheikh Mohammed. So it's quite an opportunity, really.
Now, Ben Henley, if I did my homework correctly, you are an alum of the Irish National Stud Breeding Course, are you not?
That's correct, yes.
That experience is part of what has been a broad range of international experience for you. I learned something by taking a look at your Twitter feed, by the way.
God.
I looked at Ben's Twitter account, and for your profile picture, of course, you're a native of Australia. Seriously, I had no idea that the Kraft Foods company, they make Vegemite.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it available for sale in the U.S.?
You can get it at Liquor Barn, I believe.
You believe
Very good.
Yeah.
darn well where you can get
I get mine imported, so.
Well, I will tell you that I took the liberty of chatting with some of your colleagues at Airdrie Stud. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you one of the things that came up, Ben, I heard the phrase old school horseman. And what I was told by more than one person was, they said Ben learned a lot of old school horsemanship in Australia. And when I hear that term old school, somebody in this game told me one time, they said, plenty of folks will teach the right things, but they don't always emphasize the right things. You tell me, what is it about old school horsemanship that has paid off for you?
I think in Australia, we get to handle horses from a young age that haven't had much handling. So we get to really hone our skills with the horses and a lot of different horses along the way. Plus, there's not as many staff per horses, so you're doing a lot more of the veterinary stuff yourself with injections and medications, foaling, that type of stuff. So I think that kind of gives us an advantage coming in.
One of the things that comes to mind, Ben, that there may be some folks in this room who would be curious to get your take on. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on non-equine policy matters, but just a realistic concern. Let's say that I'm a young person who wants to come to work in the U.S., but I'm not a permanent resident of the U.S. Given the fact you have had extensive global experience and that you have been in the States now for several years, how complex is the process regarding a visa? Is that something that you can help guide us just in a general sense? What's the best way to go at it?
It's very complex. The best thing you can do is get a good sponsor, which I've been very fortunate with. Mr. Burton Jones has been amazing for me. He's helped me out a lot the whole way. I started off, I think, on a J1 visa. That was a 6-month visa. I then went to a B1, I think, which lasted about a year. I then had to leave. Then for the next 4 years, I could only spend 10 months of the year in this country. I was on an H1A or H1-2B, I think it was called. So I did 4 consecutive years of 10 months in, 2 months out. And then I was lucky enough to get on an E3, which is a visa that's just specific for Australian residents that can come and work in the US. And that's been wonderful. I've been on that the last 4 or 5 years.
You know, it's one of those things that doesn't always cross the mind of someone such as myself, who grew up in the States and just frankly did not have to deal with that aspect. But appreciate your sharing your thoughts on that. We'll come back to Ben in just a moment. Ben, if you would be so kind as to, yes, pass the mic to your right to Chance Tim. Chance, we talked about the fact that you're the director of stallion seasons for Lane's End. You know, one of the terms or phrases that I often hear in this game is mucking stalls. You ever have to muck stalls?
Yeah, a few. Once or twice along the way.
So you growing up in Utah, it wasn't like you just picked up the phone and called Ambassador Farish and said, hey, I would like to have a job at Lane's End. There were intervening steps in between, weren't there?
Yeah, they realized I was no good at mucking stalls, so they gave me something else to do. So, you know, along the way, just tried to get out here and got started kind of coming from Utah and realized that this is what I wanted to do, and just really there was no plan in place, just took step by step and jumped at opportunities, and fortunately it led to where I am now.
I remember, rest his soul, the late Phil Georgieff, and Phil was a race caller who called the Chicago circuit for many, many years, and Phil passed away just not too long ago. Phil and his wife had one child. They had a son named Scott, and I recall that Phil Georgieff, and this, you know, we're going back into the early 1980s, when he was interviewed, he was asked if his son had any interest in a career in horse racing. And Phil, who lived in the Chicago suburbs, he had commented, he said, you know, he's never really specifically said, but he said it's a tough game. And he said, I'm not sure that I would actually have ever encouraged Scott. As much as I love horse racing, he said, I know how tough it can be to find the spot that you want to be in within the sport. So if the pessimist side of me says, well, you know, the reality is the national economy has contracted in recent years, and we heard Senator Thayer talk about the challenges here in Kentucky. I've seen that in Illinois. If I am a young person who says, I love this sport, I want to be involved with this sport, but it's intimidating, will there be opportunities there for me? What could you tell us today to reassure us on that front?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's, to be honest with you, I would say there's probably ample opportunity for young people in a sort of mid-level managerial supervisory role. And I think probably one of the challenges that a lot of central Kentucky farms and organizations face is that I think a lot of people early on think that they're ready to jump right into that, and you know, they're probably not. You know, they're definitely not, to be honest. So what they can do is to take their time and be patient and realize that they've got to start, you know, near the bottom and work your way up, and that with a little bit of time and some hard work and a little bit of luck, you'll be noticed, and then you'll be given an opportunity that, you know, is probably more to your goals.
Let's bring in Anthony Cook down to your left. Anthony, first of all, before we ask you specifics regarding your role with Holloway Feeds, I alluded to the fact that a lot of folks in this room are fully aware of the Cook family name, the fact that your father, Gus, was the farm manager for Claiborne for over 3 decades. But when you and I talked, you laughed. You said, you know, one thing that folks may not be aware of, there was someone in your family